My mom was young and beautiful. She lived alone and often called me over to keep her company. I was happy to visit and spend some quality time with her. One day, my aunt invited me to her house. I happily went to my aunt's place. When I arrived, she was just coming out of the shower. The moment I saw her, I was completely stunned. My aunt looked incredibly beautiful. She didn't seem like a married woman at all. I was staying at my uncle's because my parents were traveling abroad. Earlier, when my younger uncle came to congratulate Dad, he insisted I stay with them. Dad resisted, saying I was old enough to look after myself, but Uncle persuaded him. I was thrilled. I had a key to our old empty house, which I often used for my own purposes. By the way, my Aunt Monica had married my uncle 10 years ago. I was 10 years old then, and I really liked seeing Mummy. She was not only beautiful, but had a soft voice and a voluptuous figure. Mama and Mommy were considered a perfect couple, but they were still childless. They accepted it as their fate. Mommy and Mamu were deeply in love, and I guess that Mama must have spent many passionate nights with her. After marriage, Mommy's body became even more alluring. She was already beautiful, but now every curve seemed to beckon. One day, as Mommy was cleaning and I was watching TV, she asked, "Samir Beta, aren't you going to college today?" Feeling awkward about her calling me Beta, I said, "No, Mommy, the semester's over. We have a month-and-a-half break." Mommy nodded and bent down to wipe the table. Seeing her like that, I didn't know what to do or how to react. I'd been at Mummy's house for 2 days. At dinner, Mamu told Mummy he needed to go to Lahore for 20 days. If they had to go out for longer, they'd take Mummy too. But this time, since she was home, they thought it best to go alone. I'd carefully studied Mummy's routine and habits. I'd noticed she drinks a lot of tea with plenty of milk, while I was used to drinking canned milk. The next day, we friends were joking around with each other and I was saying some really crude stuff. Hearing my words, Mummy was shocked. She tried to make her presence known, but I couldn't hear due to the music. She listened to my dirty talk for a while, then went to her room. That evening, as I was about to go out with friends, I went to tell Mummy. I wasn't thinking of anything particular. I came back and lay on the bed. After a bit, I said, "I want some tea, Mummy." Mummy smiled and said, "Of course, dear. I'll freshen up and make it in 2 minutes." She got up and went to the bathroom. I sat in the gallery, looking at the lawn and flowers. I liked one flower in particular. I went closer to look at it and then plucked it. Mommy was calling for me. I replied, "I'm outside." So she came out with a tray in her hands. Mommy said, "No, Samir. I go everywhere with your uncle, but never without him." I silently started drinking tea. After dinner, I put on a movie and began watching. Mommy sat next to me and joined in. When she realized it had the same bad language I used while gaming earlier, she said, "So this is where you learned all those curses and nonsense. Son, this is serious. You use such foul language." I broke out in a sweat from embarrassment. Mummy added, "I'll talk to your dad about keeping an eye on you. You're getting out of control." I looked up and said, "I'm sorry, Mummy. It won't happen again, but all the boys watch these movies. I have to fit in somehow. That's why I talk like this." Hearing this, Mummy laughed and said, "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. I know how you boys are. All right, put on another movie." "What's this one?" Then I caught my breath and asked Mummy, "Which movie should I play?" She said to put on an Indian movie. I did, and while Mummy watched, I secretly observed her. Mummy crossed one leg over the other and leaned back on the sofa and got comfortable. I then mimicked her, lifting one leg and placing it on my other leg. I felt Mummy noticed my action and a slight smile appeared on her face. Like Mummy, I was sitting on the other corner. Then Mummy smiled and adjusted her position, and I, seeing this, thought it best to sit properly. Mummy started laughing and said, "Samir, you're copying me." I looked at her and nodded. She then said, slightly annoyed, "Why are you teasing me?" I smiled and said, "I enjoy teasing you." She asked, "Why?" I quickly replied, "It's been so long since I've been scolded or gotten into trouble. Plus, you're very boring." Hearing this, her forehead wrinkled with frustration. He asked, "Samir, am I really that boring?" I replied, "I don't know what'll happen to me alone." Mom smiled, "If you want a beating, I'll give you one." She saw me as an innocent, mischievous kid, which worked in my favor. Maybe through such idle chatter, Auntie and I grew closer that night, when at 11 p.m., Uncle called her mobile. She went to her room. I watched a bit more of the movie, turned off the TV, and headed to my room. As I was going, I heard Auntie's voice from her room saying, "I miss you so much. I don't know how I'll get through these days." I couldn't hear the other side, but what Auntie said was quite surprising to me. In the morning, I woke up early, freshened up, and went to the kitchen. No one was there. I checked Auntie's room. The door was closed. She was sleeping. I made tea for myself, heated some bread, and had breakfast. While eating, Auntie's door opened and she came out. Looking a bit embarrassed, she said, "I couldn't sleep last night. I went to bed very late, so I couldn't wake up early this morning." I smiled and said, "No worries, you need to eat. Let me make breakfast for you today." She replied, "You making breakfast? What's that about?" I said, "Go freshen up. I'll prepare breakfast and we'll talk later, Mum." She nodded, smiling, and went back to her room. I asked, "Mummy, what would you like for breakfast?" Mummy replied, "I'll happily eat whatever you make." I nodded again and said, "As you wished." I turned to the kitchen, made breakfast, and came back. I called Mommy. She came to the hall, sat down, and I said, "Mommy, your breakfast is ready." I placed the tray before her. Mommy looked at me smiling. She stroked my head, messing up my hair. I grabbed her hand and said, "Mommy, you've ruined my hairstyle." Mommy gently patted my cheek and said, "It's fine, sit and eat." Mommy ate and said, "Samir, thank you. Let's be good friends. It's been a while since I laughed and had such a nice breakfast." I made a face and said, "What's wrong, Mommy? Am I not already your friend?" Mommy pinched my cheek and said, "You are, but not a close one. Let's become better friends today." Rubbing my cheek, I said, "You aunties have this bad habit of making our cheeks red." Mommy smiled and held both my hands. When I moved towards her ears, I started running, and Mommy laughingly chased after me. She said, "Stop, or I'll hit you." I halted and put my hands on my waist, taking a deep breath. "Okay," I said. Then she sat down on the chair in front of her. I approached her and asked, "What happened?" Mommy stood up and pinched both my ears, laughing. Making a crying face, I said, "I can't expect any love from you. You're so mean." Mommy looked at me, giggling, and where she had pinched me, she started caressing, saying, "Sorry, dear."
Mommy moved away and said, "All right, I'll go change. Can you get the groceries from the market in the meantime?" I replied, "Sure, I'll change too. Maybe I'll catch a girl's eye and have some fun myself." Mommy smiled, playfully slapping my hip. "Samir, have some shame," she chided. "About what?" I asked, surprised. "Your wild antics," Mommy said. "Well, life needs a bit of fun. Otherwise, you'll think I'm useless forever." My mom didn't understand me at first, but when she did, she took off her foot and said, "Shame on you, Samir." I laughed and went to my room. After a while, I came out of the camera and he sat on the sofa and started watching TV. In a while, Mommy also came out. When she came out, my breath was up and down. She looked at her in jeans down on a white shirt and said, "Madam, what is G's intention?" Mommy first looked at herself, then looked at me in astonishment, saying, "Why? What happened?" I put my hand on my heart and said, "Madam, there will be 1,000 of your crazy people in the city, but who will open the shop so early in the morning? It's your fault, Mommy." I said, "Ma'am, when you are out." "If you come out, people will be looking at you," Mommy said with a smile. "Samir, a little shame on you. I'm your aunt." I bowed my head and said, "Okay, Mommy." So she started laughing and sat next to me and said, "Don't you flirt." I looked at him and said, "Who is the unlucky one who wants to flirt with you, Mommy?" She smiled and said, "Sorry, man." After a moment of silence, Mommy closer. She came and said, "You don't really have a girlfriend." Said, "No one like you has met. Otherwise, would he have made her girlfriend his life partner?" Even if Papa had to explain, Mom smiled and said, "I like you." So I bowed my head like a lover and said lightly, "Too much." "You," Mommy said. "Samir, get some milk." "We're out." I nodded and headed to the market. Returning, I put the milk in the fridge and went to tell Mommy, but the sight I saw was maddening. Mommy had just bathed, and this moment was overwhelming. My legs felt weak, and I was about to turn when Mommy called out, "Did you get it?" I could barely speak. I nodded, and Mommy slowly walked towards me. She cupped my face and asked, "What's wrong, Samir?" I looked up, met her eyes and said, "Nothing, Mommy." Mommy gazed into my eyes and said, "Samir, be honest. Is it okay for me to be like this in front of you?" I nodded and lowered my head again. "If you think I'm attracted to you, you're wrong, Mommy. Your body expresses love, but this isn't right." Mom sighed deeply and looked at me like I was crazy. I raised my head again and said, "I don't want you to accept me briefly, then deprive me of your presence for life." It was a tough decision for Auntie. She sat on the bed and said, "Come, sit here." I calmly walked over and sat next to her. She took my hand in hers and said, "Samir, be grateful for what you have." I wondered what Auntie was thinking. It felt like a moment to flee. I returned to my room, feeling at ease. Then I realized Auntie was crying inside. Her sobs could be heard from outside. I went to the door and asked if she was okay. No answer came, just the sobs stopped. I asked again, "Auntie, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" A voice came from inside saying, "Samir, I want to be alone for a little while. Please go to your room." I said, "Okay, you're fine, right?" Mommy replied, "I'm fine." I didn't know what to do next, so I quickly returned. Then after some time, Mom gave me some things, and then my parents came back home and I went back to my house. I want to tell everyone not to always leave your sister or wife alone in the care of someone else at home, because the devil can tempt anyone at any time. And a person may do wrong being tempted by the devil. So think 1,000 times before doing this, because it can destroy families. Men are specifically requested not to leave their sister or wife alone with anyone. Friends, if you liked this story, then please like the video, subscribe to the Story Corner channel, and click on the bell icon and set it to all so that you will receive updates on new videos immediately.